There's a strange moment that happens to a lot of people after 50. You walk through the grocery store, pick up the same brands you've been buying for years, fill the cart with foods that once felt completely normal, and then later that night you sit there thinking, why do I feel so terrible after eating now? Not violently sick. Not dramatic, just slower, more tired, more bloated, more uncomfortable. And for a lot of Americans, that feeling starts quietly. One frozen breakfast here, a processed snack there, a nostalgic comfort food dinner on a busy evening. Until one day you realize the foods themselves may not be the same anymore. Because over the last 20 or 30 years, many famous American food brands changed dramatically. Cheaper ingredients, more additives, more sugar, more sodium, more preservatives, more seed oils, more chemicals designed to make food survive warehouses instead of nourish people. And honestly, some products barely resemble what people were eating back in the 1980s or 90s. Today, we're going through 8 American food brands that adults over 50 may seriously want to rethink, and 3 brands that still seem to offer decent quality without pretending to be miracle health foods. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about becoming one of those people who only eats organic kale grown by monks on a mountain somewhere. This is just about paying attention. Because some of these foods are marketed as comforting while quietly making people feel worse every year. And I'll be honest, a few of these shocked even me. Before we start, I want to know something. What American food brand do you think changed the most over the years? The one that used to taste amazing, but now feels completely different. Leave it in the comments. And if you enjoy these honest investigations into everyday American products and brands, subscribe and stick around. Because modern grocery stores are becoming more confusing than ever. Let's start with the breakfast giant almost every American recognizes instantly, Kellogg's. Now, to be fair, not every product from this company is terrible. But many of the cereals Americans grew up loving have slowly transformed into something much more processed than people realize. And the craziest part, a lot of adults over 50 still think of cereal as a light breakfast. But when you actually look at the labels on many modern cereals, they're basically fast digesting carbohydrates mixed with sugar and artificial ingredients. Some bowls contain enough sugar to feel more like dessert than breakfast. And here's what I noticed while researching this. Many older Americans still eat cereal the exact same way they did when they were younger. Huge bowls, sometimes multiple bowls, often late at night too. But after 50, the body handles these foods differently. You get that quick burst of energy, then suddenly you feel sleepy an hour later, hungry again, craving coffee, looking for another snack. And many people don't even connect it back to the breakfast itself. One thing I kept seeing online were comments from people saying, it didn't taste like this when I was younger. And honestly, they're probably right. Food companies constantly reformulate products, sometimes to save money, sometimes because ingredient costs changed, sometimes to extend shelf life. The result is that many cereals today feel sweeter, more artificial, and less satisfying than older versions people remember. And there's another problem nobody talks about enough. A lot of these cereals are incredibly low in protein and fiber, which means they don't keep people full for very long. That becomes a bigger issue after 50 because appetite regulation changes with age. Blood sugar spikes feel stronger. Energy crashes feel harder. You start noticing the difference. Now let's move into something that perfectly represents modern convenience food culture: Lunchables. These products almost feel nostalgic now. Tiny crackers, little pizzas, cheese slices, processed meats in neat little compartments. And honestly, part of the appeal is emotional. People associate foods like this with easier times, school lunches, busy family life, quick meals that required zero effort. But nutritionally, these things are rough. The sodium levels alone can be ridiculous. And once you combine processed meats, refined carbs, preservatives, and artificial ingredients into one package, you basically create a tiny ultra-processed food bomb. Now, obviously, eating something like this once in a while isn't going to destroy someone's life. That's not the point. The real issue is frequency, because convenience foods slowly become habits, especially after 50. Cooking feels more exhausting. People live alone more often. Energy levels change. And grabbing something easy becomes incredibly tempting. That's exactly how many Americans end up eating highly processed foods almost every single day without even realizing it. And here's something interesting I noticed while reading reviews from older adults. A lot of people said these foods leave them feeling weirdly unsatisfied. You eat them, but your body almost acts like it didn't receive real nutrition. So 2 hours later, you're hungry again. That cycle matters more than people think. Now let's talk about one of the kings of frozen breakfast food, Jimmy Dean. This one honestly feels deeply American. Microwave breakfast sandwiches before work, sausage biscuits during road trips, easy hot breakfast without cooking. And to be fair, they taste good. That's the problem. A lot of ultra processed foods are scientifically designed to taste comforting, salty, rich, and addictive. But when you break down what's actually inside many frozen breakfast sandwiches, things get ugly fast. Processed meat, heavy sodium, cheap oils, refined bread, preservatives. And adults over 50 are usually the exact group trying to avoid those things. What surprised me most while researching this brand was how many people said the sandwiches make them feel exhausted afterward. Not full, not energized, exhausted, and honestly, that makes sense. A giant sodium heavy processed breakfast first thing in the morning can leave people sluggish for hours, especially if they already struggle with blood pressure, inflammation, or digestion. One comment I saw said, "These used to feel hearty. Now they just feel heavy." That sentence perfectly describes what happens with many processed foods after middle age. The body simply becomes less forgiving. Now let's move into frozen comfort meals. Marie Callender's. This brand is fascinating because it sells emotional comfort more than food. The packaging practically screams home cooking, warm kitchens, family dinners, grandma energy, pot pies, turkey dinners, creamy pasta bakes, and honestly, the meals look comforting. But nutritionally, many are loaded with sodium and stabilizers because frozen meals need to survive reheating while still tasting flavorful. And that creates a problem. A lot of adults over 50 already retain water more easily than they used to. High sodium foods suddenly feel much more noticeable. You wake up feeling puffy, thirsty, heavy. And one thing I kept noticing during this investigation is how strongly nostalgia protects certain brands from criticism. People don't evaluate these foods logically anymore. They evaluate them emotionally. If it reminds me of childhood, it must still be good. But unfortunately, many famous comfort foods today contain ingredient lists that would have looked completely bizarre decades ago. And once you start reading labels carefully, it becomes hard to unsee. Now let's talk about pure American snack nostalgia. Little Debbie. This brand might honestly win the award for strongest emotional attachment. People grew up with these snacks. School lunch desserts, gas station treats, after school comfort food, cosmic brownies, Swiss rolls, Nutty Buddy bars. And let's be honest, they taste incredible in that ultra processed, addictive kind of way. But these products are basically engineered combinations of sugar, oils, refined flour, and preservatives. And after 50, sugar heavy processed foods often hit people much harder than they used to. Energy crashes feel worse. Sleep suffers. Inflammation increases. And many people say they feel hungry again almost immediately after eating them. But here's the part I found most interesting. The most common comment online wasn't even about health. It was, "They ruined the recipe." That phrase appeared constantly. People swear these snacks tasted better 20 years ago. And again, they're probably right. Modern food manufacturing often prioritizes cost efficiency and shelf stability over flavor quality. That's why so many nostalgic snacks now taste strangely artificial compared to older versions people remember. Now we need to talk about one of the most legendary cheap freezer foods in America, Totino's. If you grew up in America, there's a good chance you've eaten these at least once, maybe during college, maybe as a teenager, maybe during those nights when nobody felt like cooking. And honestly, they became popular for a reason: cheap, fast, comforting, salty in the most addictive way possible. But nutritionally, these things are basically ultra processed chemistry experiments. Refined flour, processed cheese products, artificial flavors, heavy sodium, industrial oils. And younger people often tolerate foods like this temporarily because their metabolism recovers faster. But after 50, many adults say foods like this suddenly cause immediate discomfort, heartburn, poor sleep, fatigue, bloating. And that realization hits people hard emotionally because it forces them to admit something nobody likes hearing. I can't eat like I used to anymore. Now let's talk about canned pasta nostalgia. Chef Boyardee. This brand almost feels immortal. It survived generations, and honestly, part of me respects that. But when you actually look at the ingredients and nutritional profile, it becomes difficult to defend as an everyday meal. A lot of these canned pasta products contain high sodium, sugary sauces, refined pasta, and preservatives, while offering surprisingly little actual satiety. That's something many adults over 50 notice more now. Certain processed meals fill the stomach temporarily, but somehow still leave you feeling nutritionally empty afterward. And finally, we have the product that somehow refuses to disappear from American culture: Spam. People either adore this stuff or they act personally offended by its existence. But from a health perspective, processed canned meats become much harder to justify as regular foods after 50. Extremely high sodium, processed meat, heavy saturated fat. And doctors consistently warn older adults about processed meat consumption for good reason. Now, after all of that, let's finally talk about three brands that actually impressed me more than expected. Not perfect. Not health influencer food, just better choices compared to most supermarket garbage. First, Dave's Killer Bread. This bread actually feels more substantial, more fiber, more seeds, more texture, more protein. And honestly, after eating ultra soft processed white bread for years, many people are shocked how much fuller they feel eating real whole grain bread. Second, Siggy's. This stood out because it avoids turning yogurt into dessert. A lot of American yogurts contain absurd sugar levels. Some are basically melted ice cream pretending to be breakfast. But this style focuses more on protein and lower sugar. And after 50, protein matters more than people realize for maintaining muscle, energy, and feeling full longer. Third, Triscuits. This one surprised me most because it doesn't pretend to be trendy. It doesn't use fake wellness marketing language. It's just relatively simple compared to most snack foods. And honestly, simplicity is becoming rare in modern grocery stores. That may be the biggest lesson from this entire investigation. Many foods marketed as healthy are unbelievably processed. Meanwhile, some older simple foods quietly remain decent because they never tried to become hyper engineered laboratory products. At the end of the day, this video isn't really about fear, it's about awareness. Because once you start reading labels carefully, you realize many famous American brands are selling memories more than food. The logos stayed familiar, the mascots stayed familiar, the packaging stayed familiar. But what's inside changed completely. And after 50, the body notices. So now I want to ask you something. What food brand disappointed you the most over the years? And what classic food still tastes exactly the way you remember? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed this honest review style investigation into American food brands, subscribe for more videos like this. Because the modern supermarket may look familiar, but it's a very different world than it used to be.